The glittering lights of Hollywood often mask a far more ruthless reality that plays out behind closed doors, away from the warm studio lights and the adoring fans. For years, viewers welcomed their favorite television families into their living rooms every week, building a profound sense of connection with characters who seemed to share an unbreakable bond. We watched them laugh together, navigate life's greatest hurdles side by side, and celebrate milestones as if they were a real-world community. This carefully crafted illusion of seamless harmony is precisely what makes a hit television series so magical, yet it also makes the ultimate revelation of backstage friction incredibly jarring for the public. When the curtain is pulled back to reveal that the seemingly perfect camaraderie was actually a landscape of intense financial rivalry, tactical maneuvering, and deep-seated ambition, it fundamentally changes how we view those classic episodes. It reminds us that beneath the heartwarming storylines and the witty banter lies a massive, high-stakes corporate industry where actors are not just friends sharing a stage, but individual brands fighting fiercely for their own survival, market value, and longevity. This brings us to a major piece of television history that is currently being viewed under a completely new, highly critical microscope. If you want to stay updated on the deepest secrets of the entertainment world and never miss an inside scoop, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications right now. The delicate balance required to maintain a successful television ensemble is something that network executives and showrunners lose sleep over, because the moment one piece of the puzzle feels undervalued or superior, the entire structure can collapse. Over the past few decades, we have seen numerous beloved shows suffer from internal fractures when the public realized that the on-screen warmth did not match the off-screen reality. It is a recurring theme in modern pop culture, where a piece of media from the past suddenly resurfaces online, immediately igniting a massive wave of public scrutiny and forcing fans to reevaluate a legacy they thought was set in stone. This exact phenomenon is unfolding right now around one of the most successful and culturally resonant sitcoms of the early 21st century, a show that defined a generation of network comedy. For 9 seasons, audiences tuned in by the millions to follow a tight-knit group of 5 friends living in New York City, laughing at their romantic misadventures and growing deeply attached to their distinct personalities. The show became an absolute powerhouse for its network, generating massive ratings, endless catchphrases, and a multi-million-dollar syndication empire that continues to broadcast the series globally to this day. Central to that massive success was a breakout character whose eccentric lifestyle, sharp suits, and vibrant energy frequently stole the spotlight, turning the actor portraying him into an overnight global phenomenon. While the show was designed from its very inception to be a balanced ensemble piece, where every character's journey mattered to the overarching narrative, the cultural gravitational pull of this single character became undeniable as the seasons progressed. The actor behind this legendary role was widely praised for his impeccable comedic timing, his physical theater skills, and his unique ability to make an otherwise highly problematic character deeply lovable to the mainstream public. For nearly a decade, he was the crown jewel of the production, earning multiple award nominations and becoming the face of the series in promotional materials worldwide. However, a piece of archival media has just broken through the internet's noise, bringing a deeply buried conflict out into the open and catching the attention of millions of fans who are now expressing deep disappointment. The controversy stems from an extended, highly candid interview that took place on a legendary broadcasting platform known for extracting raw, unvarnished truths from its celebrity guests. In this particular conversation, which originally flew somewhat under the radar but has now found a second life on social media platforms like X, the actor spoke with astonishing honesty about the internal mechanics of cast salaries and contract renegotiations. He openly walked the host through the intense, often brutal periods of a show's life cycle when a comedy enters syndication, meaning the episodes are sold to other networks for reruns, and the financial stakes skyrocket into tens of millions of dollars. It is during these critical evolutionary journeys that a cast faces a major crossroads regarding their solidarity, forcing them to make a definitive choice between collective bargaining or going out alone into the wilderness of individual negotiation. When confronted by the host about whether a single holdout could completely destroy the unity and chemistry of a 5-person ensemble by demanding a separate higher-paying deal, the actor did not dodge the question. Instead, he let out a somewhat nervous, sheepish laugh and admitted that such a fracture could absolutely happen, before dropping a bombshell confession that has now triggered an immense wave of public backlash. He revealed to the host, and subsequently to the world, that during those high-stakes middle seasons of the show, he was not a supporter of collective cast solidarity, but was instead firmly aligned with the mindset of individual exceptionalism. This admission immediately prompted the host to bluntly label him the villain of the Backstage dynamic, a title that the actor laughed off at the time, but is now finding much harder to shake as the internet reacts with widespread fury. The core of the anger directed at him right now does not just stem from his desire for more money, which many accept as a standard aspect of a cutthroat industry like Hollywood, but rather from the specific justification he used to explain his actions during the interview. He suggested that because he had spent decades nurturing an individual career prior to landing the sitcom, complete with a dedicated team of agents, managers, and attorneys, it felt wrong to sacrifice his personal financial momentum for the sake of solidarity with castmates who, in his own words, had done less in their careers up until that point. This specific phrase, implying that his co-stars were somehow less deserving or less accomplished, has struck a major nerve with fans who view the entire five-person cast as equal pillars of the show's massive success. The internet has wasted no time in pointing out the historical ironies of this stance, noting that several of his castmates actually possessed highly impressive, culturally significant resumes of their own before ever stepping foot on the sitcom set. As the clip continues to accumulate millions of views and spark furious debates across entertainment forums, the legacy of this iconic television family is being severely tested, leaving fans to wonder how much of the on-screen love was real, and how much was simply a professional mask masking a fierce battle for dominance and dollars. To fully understand the gravity of this unfolding controversy and why the internet has reacted with such intense vitriol, we have to look closely at the specific individual careers and the complex tapestry of fame that defined the cast of How I Met Your Mother when it debuted on CBS back in the autumn of 2005. The actor at the absolute center of this storm, Neil Patrick Harris, who brought the high-flying catchphrase spouting corporate playboy Barney Stinson to life, based his entire financial argument on the premise that he possessed a superior career pedigree compared to his peers. It is true that Neil was a highly recognizable face in American television long before he ever put on Barney's signature sharp suits, having achieved massive national fame as a literal child prodigy in the late 1980s and early 1990s. At just 16 years old, he became a household name by starring as the titular character in the massively popular medical drama Doogie Howser, M.D., playing a brilliant teenage physician navigating the intense pressures of saving lives while simultaneously dealing with the standard growing pains of adolescence. For 4 seasons and nearly 100 episodes, Neil carried that show on his young shoulders, earning critical acclaim and a Golden Globe nomination, which permanently etched his name into the annals of American pop culture history. When that series concluded in 1993, he spent the next decade working tirelessly across theater, television guest spots, and film, carefully preserving his professional standing and nurturing a highly specialized network of elite Hollywood representatives. Therefore, when contract renegotiations rolled around for his new sitcom around the 4th and 5th seasons, Neil felt that his decades of individual labor, combined with the fact that Barney Stinson had undeniably become the breakout marketing sensation of the series, entitled him to a significantly larger piece of the financial pie. However, the online public is fiercely challenging his assertion that his co-stars had done less, pointing out that several members of the core ensemble brought an immense amount of their own star power, cultural cachet, and devoted fan bases to the table, which were absolutely vital in getting the series off the ground in its fragile early days. Chief among these co-stars was Allison Hannigan, who portrayed the artistic and fiercely loyal Lily Aldrin, and whose prior career achievements make Neil's comments seem particularly dismissive in the eyes of many fans. Long before How I Met Your Mother was even a script on an executive's desk, Allison was an absolute titan of millennial pop culture, having starred for 7 seasons as Willow Rosenberg in the groundbreaking, critically adored supernatural drama Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Her character's evolutionary arc on that show was iconic, making her a beloved figure to millions of fiercely loyal sci-fi and fantasy fans worldwide, a demographic that actively followed her to her new sitcom endeavors. Furthermore, Allison had achieved massive mainstream cinematic success by playing the hilariously memorable Michelle Flaherty in the blockbuster American Pie film franchise. which grossed hundreds of millions of dollars globally and made her one of the most recognizable comedic faces of the era. For many commentators analyzing the situation today, Allison Hannigan was arguably just as famous, if not significantly more relevant to the contemporary entertainment landscape of 2005 than Neil Patrick Harris was, making his backstage attempt to distance himself from her financially look incredibly out of touch. Then there was Jason Segel, who played the lovable, towering romantic Marshall Erickson, and who came to the sitcom with an elite pedigree in the world of alternative television comedy. Jason's had previously starred as Nick Andopoulos in Paul Feig and Judd Apatow's critically hailed 1999 masterpiece Freaks and Geeks, a show that, despite its short broadcast life, became one of the most influential cult classics of all time and launched the careers of an entire generation of Hollywood comedic royalty. Jason was also a deeply respected writer and creative force within that highly influential comedy circle, meaning he brought a specific type of creative respect and industry credibility that gave the network sitcom instant artistic merit. On the other side of the dynamic stood Josh Radnor, who took on the massive burden of playing the central protagonist and narrator Ted Mosby, and Kobe Smulders, who portrayed the independent, cigar-smoking television journalist Robin Scherbatsky. For both Josh and Kobe, How I Met Your Mother was undeniably their grand breakout moment, the massive professional turning point that transformed them from hardworking, relatively unknown actors into global television stars whose faces were plastered on billboards across the world. Because the narrative structure of the entire series fundamentally revolved around Ted's endless quest for true love and his complex multi-year romantic tension with Robin. Their performances were the emotional anchors that kept audiences coming back week after week for nearly a decade. Despite these vastly differing levels of prior fame and narrative responsibility, the ultimate goal of a network sitcom is typically to forge these 5 distinct individuals into a singular, balanced, and perfectly synchronized comedic machine. When Neil Patrick Harris appeared on The Howard Stern Show in 2023, he pulled back the curtain on the exact moments when this beautiful on-screen machine began to experience severe internal friction over money. The host, Howard Stern, who is famous for his aggressive and direct interviewing style, did not hesitate to press Neil on the sensitive mechanics of how cast salaries were handled behind the scenes. Howard noted that by the time the series finally reached its emotional conclusion in 2014, the core cast members were pulling in an astonishing $250,000 per week, a massive sum that represents the absolute pinnacle of television success. Neil freely acknowledged that they were all incredibly well paid by the final lap of their journey, laughing joyfully and admitting that he was absolutely thrilled to be clearing $250,000 for a single week of comedic work. But as the conversation shifted to the crucial middle years of the series, specifically around the 4th and 5th seasons when a network television show qualifies for the incredibly lucrative world of syndication, the true tension of the backstage environment came to light. Neil explained to Howard that this era marks a notoriously weird and nasty negotiation period in the life cycle of any hit production, because suddenly the financial stakes are no longer just about the initial network broadcast, but about the near-infinite financial returns of global reruns. It is at this exact moment that actors are forced to look at one another and decide if they want to form an unbreakable union to demand equal pay across the board, or if they want to listen to their individual teams of agents and lawyers who are whispering in their ears to abandon their friends and fight for an exclusive, solo mega deal. When Neil Patrick Harris made his surprisingly candid confession on the radio, he laid bare the exact psychological divide that so often ruptures the fragile unity of successful television casts. As the host bluntly summarized that Neil had effectively chosen to play the role of the backstage antagonist by refusing to stand shoulder to shoulder with his peers, Neil attempted to reframe the entire situation through the cold, pragmatic lens of modern corporate entertainment. He defended his actions by explaining that he never harbored any malicious intent to actively strip his fellow actors of their hard-earned income, but rather felt a fiduciary obligation to unleash his personal representation to secure the absolute maximum value for his individual brand. In the fiercely competitive landscape of network television, where a single cancellation notice can instantly erase a steady income, actors are constantly conditioned to view themselves as independent businesses. Neil emphasized that his agent, manager, and attorney had spent years fighting tooth and nail to build his career momentum, and from their perspective, It made little economic sense to artificially cap his earning potential out of a sense of pure solidarity with co-stars whose historical resumes were different. Yet, this highly individualistic corporate philosophy is precisely what has ignited the current firestorm of public criticism across social media platforms like X, as modern audiences increasingly value transparency, workplace equality, and mutual support. For many dedicated viewers who spent nearly a decade investing their emotions into the lives of Ted, Barney, Marshall, Lily, and Robin, learning that Neil viewed his castmates through such a transactional, hierarchical lens has deeply tarnished the nostalgic magic of the show. The internet has been swift and unforgiving in its commentary, with numerous fans pointing out that while Barney Stinson was undeniably a flashy break-it character who drove merchandise sales and internet memes, he could never have existed in a vacuum without the impeccable reactions and comedic support of the other four actors. A sitcom is fundamentally a game of comedic catch, where the person throwing the ball relies entirely on the skill of the person catching it. And fans argue that the seamless chemistry exhibited on screen was a collective achievement that deserved collective financial reward. The backlash has naturally prompted commentators to draw immediate, highly unfavorable comparisons to the historic solidarities displayed by the legendary cast of Friends during the late 1990s and early 2000s. In that landmark piece of television history, all six main actors famously refused to negotiate individually, demanding that the network pay every single member of the ensemble the exact same salary, going so far as to accept voluntary pay cuts for certain members in the early seasons to ensure complete parity. That historic display of real-world solidarity not only netted them a record-breaking $1 million per episode each by the final season, but it also cemented their legacy as a true family both on and off the screen, creating an enduring mythos of unity that continues to enhance the show's value decades later. By contrast, Neil's admission that he actively resisted this type of unified front until the absolute final stretch of the series has led many fans to look at the behind-the-scenes dynamics of How I Met Your Mother with a newfound sense of cynicism. Some online critics have even remarked that they always suspected a subtle underlying tension or coldness in the cast's real-life interactions during promotional tours. And they feel this financial revelation finally provides a definitive explanation for that perceived lack of genuine warmth. Despite the overwhelming tide of public disappointment, a significant contingent of the fanbase has stepped forward to fiercely defend Neil's historical stance, arguing that the brutal realities of Hollywood economics completely justify his self-interested strategy. These defenders assert that television is a meritocracy driven entirely by ratings and market demand, and during the absolute peak of the sitcom's cultural relevance, Barney Stinson was the primary engine drawing in casual viewers, securing magazine covers and generating massive advertising revenue for CBS. From this perspective, demanding a salary that reflected his disproportionate impact on the show's commercial success was not an act of arrogance but rather a standard, logical business move that any rational professional would make when holding a position of extreme leverage. When asked by the host what ultimately caused him to change his mind and finally join the collective bargaining unit toward the twilight of the series, Neil explained that the passage of time and the shifting dynamics of the production completely altered his perspective. By the time the show was wrapping up its 8th season, the creative team and the network were facing the very real possibility that the journey would conclude right there, leaving the overarching mystery of the titular mother permanently unresolved. When the network ultimately made the decision to greenlight a 9th and final season to serve as an extended, celebratory lap for the beloved franchise, the internal atmosphere transformed from one of anxious survival to one of mutual appreciation. Neil reflected that by that advanced stage in the show's life cycle, after nearly 200 episodes of intense collaborative labor, every single member of the Core Five had comprehensively proven their immense worth to the brand. Each actor had delivered iconic performances, carried major narrative arcs, and earned their stripes through years of relentless production schedules, making it entirely appropriate for the entire ensemble to equally reap the immense financial benefits of the final victory lap. This ultimate convergence allowed the cast to present a fully unified front for the final season, ensuring that everyone walked away with the monumental $250,000 per week salary that properly honored the historic achievement of the series. Ultimately, this resurfaced interview serves as a powerful, illuminating reminder of the profound disconnect that so often exists between the beautifully synchronized art we consume on our screens and the incredibly complex, often cutthroat business mechanisms that operate behind the scenes. It forces us to confront the reality that our favorite television families are, at the end of the day, teams of highly ambitious professionals navigating an industry that rarely rewards sentimentality over strategy. Whether you view Neil Patrick Harris as an arrogant colleague who undermined the collective unity of a brilliant ensemble, or as a shrewd, fiercely pragmatic professional who simply understood his exact market value in a ruthless system, this financial drama adds an undeniable layer of real-world complexity to the show's enduring legacy. As the debate continues to rage across internet forums and social media feeds, it ensures that the next time fans sit down to binge-watch their favorite episodes, they will be looking just a little bit closer at the smiles, the laughter, and the invisible lines that separate friendship from business. What are your personal thoughts on this intense television salary revelation, and do you believe a breakout star has a moral obligation to maintain absolute financial solidarity with their ensemble cast? Or should they always fight for their own individual value? We would love to hear your detailed insights, opinions,